Good morning. Welcome to our last CCC speaker series of this year. It is somehow Tuesday, the 20th of June. My name is Liz Hewitt, and we are coming live on YouTube and Facebook from Cranleigh School in Abu Dhabi. We are here today to talk about the topic of managing big feelings. For children, but let's be honest, we could all do with a little bit of help with that topic sometimes. I am, first of all, just going to say thank you to the CCC for supporting these events. We normally have somebody in the background who helps us to field questions, but unfortunately we do not today. So it's just Francis and myself. So I do apologize if we have any tech issues. We have just been backstage and we had a number of issues of getting on and making sure Francis was in the call, but hopefully we'll come to you today and it's going to be a smooth ride. So I know some of you are watching live, but I also know that many of you will be watching asynchronously. I didn't really know that word before COVID, but you'll be watching later. So if you are watching and it's Friday night or Sunday morning, or you're walking or whatever you're doing, get yourself a nice cup of coffee, get comfortable, and hopefully we'll all learn something today, because every talk that we've ever done with Role Models UK, where Francis is coming from, have been eye-opening, they've been thought-provoking, they've been really, really useful. So just before I introduce Francis into the call, I'm just going to just give a little bit of background, because actually one of the things that maybe I don't do very well in my role is explaining what we're doing what we're doing at Cranleigh Abu Dhabi in terms of wellbeing. And I have recently put together a parent wellbeing group just to look at what we're doing and what we could do better. Some of the feedback from our SWOT analysis has been that our parents don't always know what's going on. The newsletter's hugely informative about what's coming up, and we do put events and things like this on, but you don't always feel you've got that bigger overview. So just a few things that we've done recently, just to help us support our children. We welcomed George Peterkin from Mind Your Health Limited over the weekend of the 2nd of June. And he did a series of workshops for our parents, which was really well received. I know all of the parents who were involved really valued doing the mental health first aid course for children and young people. He also came that afternoon and did the same course for our staff. So we had 16 people, because that's the maximum number you can have in a group. We had 16 members of our staff trained in that. And then on the Saturday, it was a very hard-hitting course on suicide first aid for children and young people. And most of our senior leadership team, and again, many people from the pastoral team came to that. And then on the Sunday, we were the first school in the world to host the eating disorder training. So it's eating disorder awareness training that George has put together. And 24 of us, alongside counsellors from other schools across Abu Dhabi and Dubai, came to Cranleigh, and we again, it's, I teach psychology. I think I know things, but it was massively eye-opening in terms of how we can support our children around eating and around eating disorders and disordered eating. And it was really, really informative. So we've got a lot of things to take back now as a school and improve our practice. Like I said, we have a wellbeing group of parents. If that's something that you would be interested in joining, it's once every half term we meet. We talk about what we can do in terms of speaker series and things like that. What do we need to do more of? So if you're interested in joining, just drop me an email. And it's a really, really supportive group of mums and dad. I say dad. So if you do have any, if any of the dads are listening, or if any of your husbands might be interested in joining, do send them my way, because it's really good to have a totally inclusive feel to that. So that's some of the things we've been doing. The CCC have also been busy. They are interviewing, like I said, for new members today. So thank you to all the people who've applied. We have been inundated with applications, which is fantastic. And they actually support our community. So just yesterday, we had a coffee appreciation for all of our staff. And the week before, we did a party for all of our support staff, for our cleaners, security, everyone who helps here at Cranleigh. And it was a really fun day. We had musical chairs, a talent show, food, and like I say, it was a beautiful day that we hope goes some way to make all of our people here feel included. So that's what we've been doing. I'm going to introduce Francis into the call, because we are also hosting in the summer a Role Models course too, actually, and she can talk to us a little bit more about that at the end of this. And it's the first time this has happened in the UAE. So I know we've already got lots of children signed up. We're hoping to do more of these. We're looking at booking one in for October half term when we know more of our families will be here. And they are around, this one is around resilience. And role models do an amazing job at doing the extra bits that our children might need, looking at skills. Frances is a teacher. She taught for 13 years in the UK. She was head of year 6, which is, an interesting year group, coming out of being just children into being more, going towards more secondary age. And then she's been working for role models for many years and recently has completed her master's in psychology. So she's not only experienced in terms of working with children, but she's also got the theoretical background as well. So she's going to be talking to us. I'm just going to introduce her in. Fingers crossed she's there. Hi, Frances.
Morning, Liz. I am here and I hope I will be here for the next hour. Very reliant on my phone Wi-Fi this morning, so thank goodness for technology. But it's lovely to be here.
Thank you. And talking about big feelings, that feeling of anxiety is actually going to work.
We had a moment, didn't we?
We did have a moment, yeah, but we're here and that's all that matters. So I am going to hand over to you because, like I say, we've had a lot of big feelings in my house over the last few weeks. Feelings about moving up from year group, when the children know who their teachers are, they're so settled, and then all of a sudden they have to change. That's such a big thing in my house personally. And also as a teen mum, teen girl mum, that's just big feelings every day, so we remember that time. So I'm going to sit back. I'm here in the background. If anybody would like to ask a question, please feel free to add to Facebook or to YouTube. If you don't want to ask the question on here, please drop me an email. I will edit my email address if I can. I forgot to do that. I'm so sorry. But my email is lhewitt@cranleigh.ae. So if you want to drop me an email, I'll be checking, and then it's anonymous, and we can ask any questions that you have as parents, because let's be honest, that's why we're here. We're just here to support you, to support your children. So I will drop out, Frances, hand over to you and put in the PowerPoint, and I'll see you on the other side. All right, thank you.
Thank you so much, Liz. Fantastic. This is a new platform for me, so I'm absolutely fascinated by it, but it works extremely well. Good morning, everybody. It's quite hard to follow Liz's beautiful introduction, and so interesting to hear all the amazing things going on at Cranleigh and in the Cranleigh community. We're thrilled to be working with you again. I know we've done these talks with parents at Cranleigh previously, and as Liz said, we will be with you this summer, and I will chat to you a little bit more about that as we go through. But we're here this morning. I'm going to be speaking to you about managing big feelings. A little bit about me, although actually Liz did a brilliant introduction. I was a teacher for a very long time, and my year 6 experience and year 5 experience, I was actually in an international school, so I've got a real sense of some of the emotions that come with that as well, with joining, going to school in a country that is not your own, and joining at different points in the year, and maybe only being there for a year or two before you move on. And as you said, I've been with role models for a fair while now as well, and I'm absolutely thrilled to be here. I feel that the work we do enormously fills the gap that is in some of the education systems, particularly here in the UK, in terms of well-being and managing emotions and that mental health. So I have a little bit actually about role models for those of you who may not have come across us before. So we are a character education organisation, and we're based here in the UK, but we work across the UAE and the Middle East, and we also work in China and other countries internationally as well. And we do our work both online and offline. And as Liz said, our offline offering is in those in-person courses, and we come over to your country and we teach the children. And we have 4 pillars of learning, and so 4 themes for our courses, which are collaboration, leadership, resilience, and creative problem solving. And within all 4 of those topics, we cover all manner of skills and life skills, which we feel is really what children need to progress and thrive in our society today. So much of it is based in the top 10 skills that the World Economic Forum concluded were the skills children will need in the workplace moving forward. And it's all about really giving children what they need to make the changes they want to make in the world. As we're talking with our children now, it's not so much going to be, what do you want to be when you're older, because we don't know what our job sector is going to look like with the modern changes we have going on. So we really equip children with the skill set that they'll need to enter into any kind of workplace and to make those changes to the world that they are going to want to make. So I have a question for you, and if you would like to put your answers in the chat, please do. And it's just for us to see, it's not to be shared. Just really is helpful to have a sense from you of the topics you would like covered today in terms of the emotions, and I really will try and address those. So just maybe hold in mind or have a thought, what emotions perhaps for you as a family at the moment are you really struggling with? And when I speak to parents, often what comes up is anxiety, an awful lot, and fear around certain things coming up. Anger comes up a lot. I think anger is that emotion that all other emotions can turn into. Particularly, we see this in young children. As we grow up, we learn ways to manage our anger, but I'm sure we all can think of moments where we've lost our temper and we felt angry, and managing and feeling that emotion is so, so difficult. We also get asked a lot about resilience and emotional resilience. So, really hoping to address some of those things this morning. And as I say, if you want to share anything about what it is you really want to work on, then please do. And before I really get into it, I have a second question for you, which is really, again, something for you to keep in mind and to help contextualize what we're going to talk about today. What is it that you need as an adult when you are suffering or experiencing, I should say, from a big emotion? Because ultimately, in those moments when our children are really struggling, we probably have go-to solutions or go-to responses, which are, we want to try and help them manage that emotion. We want to stop them being upset, but we also want to get in the car and get on with where we're going. We also need to get their shoes on and get out the door. We also want them to feel happy walking into school. We are under pressure. We've got things going on in our day. It's never at a good time to actually address what's going on for that child. But if we think about what we need, I'm sure most of us would agree, and I know certainly for myself, what I need when I'm overwhelmed, stressed, upset, angry is actually somebody just to listen and somebody to hold that space for me and know that I can say what's on my mind. And I'm not necessarily going to be met with lots of responses. I don't really want a solution. I just want my feelings to be validated. And so much of what we'll talk about today will be about validating emotions. And I probably will say that several times. It's so key. If we can validate what our children are feeling, we can really try and hold that emotion before it starts getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And we want really ultimately to be able to support our children in working through these feelings so that they get a sense of how to manage them, how to process them, and how to move through them. And that way they grow into adults who can manage and regulate their emotions. So sometimes it can be helpful to hang on to, in those really stressful moments of big emotion that they're experiencing, okay, what would I need right now? And have I got the energy, the time, the strength to give them that at the moment? Because it feels like a big thing to do. But if we can do it, actually, in the long run, we are managing those, the number of times that these big explosions might happen. And obviously, as you're listening at home, some of you might have children that are just exploring and growing in different emotions and different ways, and some of you may have children who are finding it far, far more difficult. So there's a whole spectrum of emotion and how we experience it. But I really hope today that what I'm going to talk to you about is going to be beneficial, and I hope there's going to be something that you can take away. I'm going to talk through 10 top tips, and we've had brilliant feedback about these. Not all of them will resonate with all of you, but I hope there'll be some that you feel like, okay, that's really something that I think would work for me and my family, and I'm going to take that away and have a go. And at the end, I've also got some really good book recommendations for you, and I will make sure I tell you about what's going on in the summer. Don't let me forget, Liz. So, tip number 1 is hold consistent boundaries. Now, this is really difficult to do. I think any teacher listening knows that consistency in the classroom is absolutely key, but also really difficult. And it's hard, isn't it? In the moments where we need to just get on with what's happening, we want to avoid those big emotions. It's very easy to say, okay, you can have the bag of sweets as we're walking back from the supermarket. You can have the extra minutes of, extra 10 minutes on the iPad before we're having dinner. It's very easy to give in to that child before that big meltdown happens. But actually, if we can try and have a boundary that is consistent, children then feel safe. They know what is expected of them. They have a parameter within which they can then be very free with their feelings and their emotions and their thoughts and developing themselves as little individuals. So, creating that boundary is actually a really held place for them and allows them to feel much safer. So, in situations that might look like something like it's okay to feel angry that your brother broke your tower, but it's not okay to hit him. It's okay to feel cross with me that you're not going to the party, but it's not okay to swear. And they're obviously just two examples, but within those examples and within having boundaries, what we then do, and what we can do is talk more around consequences rather than punishment. And again, this is a big thing in school. We would never punish a child in school, but of course, we have consequences for behavior. And the distinction there is that consequences feel more empowering actually for the child. A punishment very much feels like it's something that's happening to you, but a consequence is an outcome from a choice that you've made. And so we might give our child a choice. I know you're really angry. I can see you're really angry that your brother's broken your tower. Step away, take a moment, and if you want to keep playing and you think you can, then great. If you think you're going to hit your brother, we're going to have to find a different game. And obviously, that can be scaled up or down, put in a different context for different situations. But really, if you are setting the boundary and giving the choices, they'll make a choice. And it's actually amazing how that does settle the emotions. Um, Also, with this one, it's good to say that we often, and I'm sure lots of us will agree with this, we often focus so much on what children shouldn't be doing and what we don't want them to do. And actually, if we can emphasize what we do want them to do and the behaviors we do want to see, they're much more likely to do that. So there's so much negativity and so much don'ts, surrounding all of us. So we often say, don't shout at your sister, don't talk to me like that, don't do that. And actually, it really helps if we can say what we would like to see them doing. So I'd love it if you could include your sister with this. It'd be really lovely if you could just ask me that again in a much nicer tone. And again, as a teacher, this is a huge thing that was miraculous in my behaviour management. Rather than asking the children who were swinging on their chairs, please stop swinging on your chair, I would say, thank you, everybody sitting really beautifully. And one by one, da 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 da, all the children swinging on their chairs would stop. So I really urge you to actually give that one a go. It's just about kind of almost inverting our speech and how we approach things. And of course, it's so natural, isn't it, to say, don't do that, especially in those moments of, something that might be a little bit dangerous. But if we can try and give it the positive slants, that really can be very miraculous. And it says at the bottom of the slide there about being validating the emotions. And as I've said, that is something I'm going to keep saying throughout these slides. So tip number one, hold consistent boundaries. And it can be nice as a family or maybe with your partner to talk about what that might look like, because what's really difficult is in the moment, maybe we're not sure actually what our boundaries are, and maybe our boundaries are different to our partners, and that can be confusing as well. So, tip number two. This is about allowing children to feel the difficult emotions. And again, I should have prefaced at the beginning, all these tips might feel quite difficult. And so I do apologize for that. But they are designed and based in scientific studies to show us ways that we can get a smoother journey for our children ultimately, even if the steps feel big. So, allowing difficult emotions, it's very much our job to help children manage their emotions rather than take the emotions away. It's really instinctive to want to banish that emotion and smooth over that moment. We don't want our child to be feeling that level of emotion. It's difficult for them, it's difficult for us to see. It's also difficult for us to experience. It can be embarrassing. We can feel a level of shame around our child is not behaving the way we would like them to. And we just want to eradicate all of these big emotions. But actually, we know that one of the traits of resilient people is that they understand emotions and difficult times are temporary. And the only way we can teach children that emotions and difficult emotions are temporary is if we let them feel them. If we don't let them feel them and work through them and come out of the other side of them, they won't ever learn that they can cope with them. And so we really want to try and do this when they're small, when the problem is small, when the reason they're crying is because we took the iPad away, or we cut their toast in the wrong way, or because they had an argument with their sibling. We want them to process that feeling and realize they can cope with it, so that when they're tackling bigger issues when they're older, they have that emotional resilience, they have that emotional literacy, and they have a frame of reference. The other thing is to really be able to remind our children of when they've coped in the past. And again, we can't do that if we've not let them cope. So while it is really difficult, and while I appreciate this isn't something that can be done every single time our children are experiencing big emotions, because sometimes we will just have to sweep them up and put them in the car and get them to school. But if it can be done 2, 3, 4 times out of the 10 times, the emotional intelligence that you're building in your children is incredible. And so you're helping them realize that actually they can cope with what they're feeling, and you're holding a safe space in which they can explore that. And this is also a really good opportunity to connect with our child in these moments. And there's a little phrase there: connect before you correct. And rather than trying to correct the moment, rather than trying to distract, which is a really good, well, really they're on the brink of and is about to make them upset. Excuse me. Rather than trying to distract them, so there's often the example that we give of, you've picked your child up from school and they're crying, they're upset, their friends are all going off on a play date and they've not been invited to it. And of course, they're really upset. And instinctively, we might say, no, it's fine. You had a play date last week. Let's go home. We can stop at the ice cream place on the way. We'll do something lovely. But that isn't helping our child process that feeling. What can help and connect us to them more is to say, I can see you're really upset about this, and I totally understand. Not being invited must feel really difficult. And what that's doing is completely almost letting those bubbles of emotion settle down. In those fight or flight moments, what we're doing is we're instigating the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the part of our brain that calms us down. And that then leaves us open to having conversations with our children and learning more about what it is that is upsetting them. And that's another thing I'm going to come on to shortly. So, top tip number 3 is avoid asking too many questions, which I've sort of just touched on in what I was saying actually. I think again in those moments we desperately want to know what's happened. So our child comes out of school and they're crying. What's happened? Oh, I've not been invited to the party. Okay, well let's go home and let's do something lovely, and then you can tell me more. Why do you think you've not been invited to the party? Who else was invited? Or if something's happened at school, what happened? Where were you? Who said that? What did you say? Where was your teacher? What happened next? We want to understand, don't we? We desperately want to know the experience of our child so that we can support them in it. But again, if we think back to earlier when we said, what is it do we need when we're in these moments? Imagine maybe you come home from work, you've had a difficult day, you've said, oh, I had this meeting, it didn't go the way I hoped. I'm feeling really upset about it. And your partner says to you, well, why didn't it go that way? Well, what did you say? Well, were you ready with your presentation? Well, had you prepared? Well, what happened next? It's very, very confronting. And it also doesn't help us rationalize and process what's going on for us. So in those moments, although it's our natural instinct and we feel that by asking questions that we're helping, it actually spirals that emotion deeper rather than helping people pull out of that emotion. And it's only really at a calmer time, which is going to be the next tip, that we can really find out what's going on for our children. So validating how they're feeling, giving them the space to feel it, and actually not asking the questions yet. And that's not being disinterested. And we can say, I'm here to help you. I'm going to help you, but let's just let you get through this first. So it's holding that space so that they feel safe to express their emotions. So, next one. And this is giving them a calm moment to talk about it, and talking to them when you're calmer, when they're calmer. And actually, that's key as well, talking to them when you're calmer, because in those moments of big meltdown, we can get quite tense as well, can't we? So it can be really overwhelming in those moments for our children, in that fight or flight moment where they're having these big emotions for whatever reason. And asking those questions gets too bombarding and too confronting. So in a moment that's calmer, when the emotion has passed, it might be half an hour later, it might be the next day, really be curious about what was going on for your child. And it's that moment that you might want to say, you know, yesterday I picked you up from school and you were really sad. Is that how you were feeling? I wonder what was going on for you yesterday. And what's key here is actually having these conversations has been shown that if we have those conversations side by side, they're much less confronting and they're a much easier space in which to open up. So having a walk and a conversation can be far more beneficial for both of you than sitting down and having a conversation. Doing it when you're driving home in the car, maybe you're washing up and drying up next to each other, or you're cooking. I always think playing a jigsaw puzzle is a really good one. And even though you might be sitting opposite each other, you're both focused on the pieces, you're just moving them around, you're in a mindful moment. And that can be a really good time to say, you know, the other day when you got really upset with your brother, what do you think was going on then? And that is building emotional intelligence for children. That's helping them actually reflect back on what they were feeling. And that's when they can sometimes say, yeah, you know what? I don't know if it was because my brother had annoyed me. I think it's because I was really worried about my test in school the next day. And that enables, they're the skills that we need children to have to be able to cope as they get older. So, in line with talking to them in a calm moment, these are a couple of strategies that we actually teach children on the courses. And we've been told that just going to go back. We've been told that actually, well, I myself use this. Lots of our parents say to us, this is brilliant. I do this in a list when I've got something overwhelming to manage, a decision to make, but a decision that's very emotionally fueled, and I need to be a bit more analytical about it. And what this can do is help, again, children process what they're feeling. So this might be that they've got that big test coming up, and we've seen the days building up to this. We've seen the temper not being as level as normal. We've seen children getting more upset, more on the edge. And what we can do is say, okay, well, you've got your exam. What is it about that that is worrying you that you can control? What is it about that setting, that situation, that moment that we can control? So it might be that they can control how well prepared they are, how much work they've done to prepare themselves, what it is that they wear, even. So they're not frantically thinking about it on that day. Or if it's a school uniform, of course, they know what they're wearing, but actually feeling strong in that uniform, what we wear can have a real impact on our mental state. Smiling, again, has a real impact on us. If we smile, our shoulders relax, our body language changes, and it lifts our mood and makes us feel more proactive, more confident. So they can manage also that they've had a reasonably good night's sleep. Hopefully, that might be something that sits in the middle of that diagram, but hopefully they can manage how prepared they are, how much they've slept, what time they get there, how long they leave for the journey, so they're not getting stressed. The things that they can't control might be, obviously, they're not going to know what questions are going to come up. They're not going to know how well prepared their friends or their peers are and how they're going to do and what they're experiencing and feeling. And within things like this, we often get that comparison culture. Oh, so and so is much more confident. They're really ready for the test. We don't really know that's true. You're not going to necessarily know who's going to be invigilating the exam. And what this helps us do, and again, it's a trait of a resilient person, that they question their thinking. They question their thinking, they question they're doing, and they look for the good stuff. So what resilient people learn to do is, you know what, this is in my control, and I'm going to give that my energy. This is not in my control. The thoughts around what's not in my control are feeding my negative voice, and it's not helping me, so I'm going to settle it down. And it really emphasizes focusing on the positive aspects of a stressful moment. So for younger children, This can look like something like this, where we talk about the worry monster, and for adults and older children, that inner critic in our minds, that inner voice that I know we've all got. And this is really good when we've got those ruminating negative worries. So if we've got a young child and maybe they're going on a play date and they've just got constant thoughts of panic almost. What if I don't like the food? What if I'm scared of their dog? What if their big sister isn't kind to me? What if I miss you? What if I want to come home? Lots and lots of these questions can just go round and round and round in our heads. Um, and again, if we teach our children to focus on the positive, so what are we missing in thinking about this situation? Because we're hardwired to go to the negative, and that's what we're doing here. Let's look at what might be amazing about this play date. It's down the road, so if you want to come home, I'll come and get you. The chances of you being given food that you don't like are really, really slim. And if you were, what might you do? Would you cope? They've got a dog. You're a little bit worried about dogs, but I know that dog's a really friendly one. But they've also got a hamster, and you love hamsters. So it's really just about shifting the mindset and helping children see things from that alternative point of view. More, I guess, that glass half full rather than glass half empty, which I know is a real cliche. But actually, that is what resilient people are able to do. They're able to look at the positives in a situation. On here as well, we've got what's possible versus what's probable. And that's a really good one to teach children. And actually, children who are sort of in year 4, 5, 6 learning about probability and statistics and maths can really kind of get onto this one. But it's a great one for adults as well. You know, it's possible that that thing we keep ruminating about is going to happen, but is it probable? It's a really good one actually for anxiety. If it did happen, would you cope? I think we've mentioned that one. And the worry box or the worry monster. Lots of schools do this, have a worry box in the classroom, but it's actually a lovely thing to do as a family and not something that we tend to think of doing. But lots of parents have said to us, you know what, that's really, really worked. Because what it does is it helps children know that you are going to be there for them to address their worries. If it's in that moment where we just haven't got the time, we can say, really want to give time to this, write it down for me, and let's look at it this evening. And it might be, some families have said they look at it every evening after school, in the afternoon. Some have said they do it weekly, so like a Sunday evening before bedtime. They get it out, they go through it. And often then, the worries from a couple of days before and it's gone. And then what you can do is actually then talk about, well, what did you do in the end to cope with that worry? And look how you did cope with it. And that's going back to that point of helping children work through their emotion and experience it and realizing that it's temporary. So I think it's tip number 5, and this one's about introducing a calming activity. And this can look very different for different families. Some things will feel more natural for you than others. But the idea of this is not just to give children a go-to technique in the moment they're feeling overwhelmed, because sometimes we don't have the brain capacity to process that and to be able to let ourselves help ourselves. But if we've embedded some of these activities in our child's day-to-day, then they have got a toolbox to go to. So this can be playing outside in nature, going for a walk, doing some mindfulness, learning a breathing exercise, mindful colouring. Any of these things is what can help us get out of that fight or flight moment. And if we embed them regularly, they actually help us from preventing us getting into those moments. One mindful or breathing technique that I do a lot is the 5 senses one. And this is actually something that you can just do as a family, as a game. So when you're in the car and you think of 5 things you can see, 4 things you can hear, 3 things you can smell, 2 things you can touch, 1 thing you can taste. And obviously you can mix those up. And that's a really nice little quick game to do on the way to school. But it also teaches children in those moments of worry or in those moments of anxiety. It's an incredibly good breathing exercise. You just think slowly and breathe slowly as we do it. So I thought I'd talk about this a little bit now, actually, and we can chat about it later when I've got with Liz back as well. But it just gives us a bit of a moment, between the 10 top and maybe heavy tips. But these are the dates of when we will be in Abu Dhabi delivering our courses. And as Liz said, it is the resilience course. And for our younger children, we call this Brilliant Me and My Mind. It covers all the same skill set, but it's just in a more child-friendly language and a bit more of a fun term to appeal for them. The courses are incredibly interactive, incredibly fun. They do loads of challenges. They meet new friends. And everything is designed to develop all of the skills we're talking about today and many, many more. So it's from the 3rd to the 7th of July. The links there are clickable. So when you get a copy of these slides, if you're interested, please do click on those links. They will tell you more about the courses and you can book your place. And as Liz said, there's quite a few people booked on already and numbers are filling up. So if you're interested, I'm sure we'll get these slides out for you today, if not tomorrow. Please do book on. If you're really keen, you can head to our website straight away and have a look. So please do. And any questions about that, I can answer at the end. I'm really mindful of time and leaving time to talk at the end. So I'm going to move on to tip number 6, which is meet them with a calm tone and talk to them in a calm tone. And this is all around that calmness, isn't it? Creating calm setting for them, introducing the calm strategies and the calm moments. When these difficult challenges happen, these highly emotive moments, I think if you think back to them, and I know for me as well, we get frantic, don't we? Our emotions bubble up and get higher. Our voices get higher. Our bodies get tenser. That real frantic sense of almost panic. And actually, we're just fueling that situation. And what we want to do here for children is de escalate it. We want to help bring them back to a calm place and bring them to meet us where we are rather than bringing us up to meet them where they are. And when I was teaching, when I was a new teacher, somebody said to me, if the children are getting too loud and you're finding yourself raising your voice to get them to listen to you, whisper. And this was absolutely miraculous. So when the kids were getting too loud and I was, almost having to shout as well, and raising my voice over the noise of 30 children bubbling away to bring them back to me. It might be at the end of a PE lesson, at the end of lunches as they're coming in. Then actually when I whispered, little by little, they all stopped talking to tune into my calmer, quieter voice. Thank you for sitting nicely. Thank you for listening. And all of a sudden, so much more quickly than me raising my voice, they were ready and listening. And I hadn't got myself into a state where I felt frustrated. And it just made a much calmer classroom environment for our learning. So if you can meet them with a calm and neutral tone, and I fully appreciate how difficult that is, but it really does create a calm place for them to meet you at. So tip number 7 is really more for us, and it's really powerful actually, and it's to remind us to separate the feelings that they're experiencing, which we possibly don't even know about, maybe they don't even know about, separate to the behavior. Every behavior we see is driven by a feeling, and we always address the behaviors. Of course we do, they're right there in front of us. But actually what we need to do is discover what the feeling is. So everything actually we've said so far can help bring us and our children to a place where we can explore those feelings, where we de-escalate the moment, we meet them in a calm place, we don't confront them with the questions, we wait till the moments pass, and we can address the feeling and help them manage feelings. And then what we find is that the big behaviors aren't happening so often. And I think very often these big behaviors happen, don't they, when it's at the end of a lovely day that we might have planned, but actually they've been a bit overtired, or it's just a lovely meal that we've cooked for them and then we've not got the dessert they wanted, or whenever we're just tired and overwhelmed, emotions fly high. And when our children are having these big moments, it can feel really attacking for us and really personal. And I think if we can separate the behavior from the feeling, it can just help us in that moment not feel so attacked and not take it so personally, and say to ourselves, you know what, there's something going on here for them, and I need to let them have that emotion and then figure it out. And there's a quote there that says, you might feel as though your child is giving you a hard time, but they are having a hard time. And it can actually be incredibly helpful and powerful to remember that in that moment. And it can help you manage your emotions, settle you down, bring you down to a place of calm and where you can meet them as well. And that ABC there is all about being curious. So being curious to find out what is going on for our children here that's making these explosions happen. And you know your children. So you know if this is a developmental meltdown, hormones are raging, whether they're 2 or 12 or 13 or 15 or 16. And you also know if this is not really like them. And actually, is there something going on that we need to get to the bottom of and help support them in? So being curious. And I'm going to come to that one again actually in a moment. So tip number 8, and it leads on from the always be curious. It's nice to have that ABC held in your mind. And it's about identifying triggers and keeping a diary. And journaling and keeping a diary is a great tool actually for ourselves to manage our emotions, for our children to encourage them to manage their emotions. It can be one of those lovely calming activities that we introduce to them. But this is the sort of diary that you might be able to keep in terms of trying to align what you're seeing with your child's timetable. And it might feel like, I don't have time to start keeping a diary of what my children are up to day in, day out. And this might not work for everybody, but for some children, you might begin to notice that the big behaviors happen at the end of the school day. And actually, maybe they're hungry, maybe they need a snack, maybe their blood sugar levels are low. It might happen at the end of the school week, and we're really excited. We're looking forward to the weekend. We've picked them up from school, but they're overwhelmed, they're exhausted. It's been a really long week for them. It might happen at the end of a social event with family, or they've been to a party. What we can start to learn from this, and actually I've had parents tell me this, that they've realized that particularly also in the school holiday times when the routines aren't there, there's been almost too much for the children. And when they realized that, they were able to start preempting it and build in smaller one-to-one moments, build in calmer moments, build in, a family cinema evening rather than another meal out with friends. So it sounds a little bit clinical maybe, but it is really helpful for some. So if you feel like that might be good for you and you feel like that's resonating, please give it a go. So top tip number 9. This one's about modeling behavior. And again, this is a really hard one actually to do. And it's a really hard one for me to ask you to do. It absolutely comes from no place of judgment, because day in, day out, we are experiencing our own level of emotions and stresses and life and difficulties. And we're just going about our day and we're being ourselves. And that's not always at the forefront of our mind, modeling for our children how to react and respond in different situations. But if we can it's almost role play, almost start embedding, especially when they're young, moments when we can show some vulnerability to our children and model to them how we've coped with a difficult moment. So we might just say, "Oh, yesterday when we came home from school and I was a bit snappy, I realised I'd had a really difficult day at work actually, and I think I was just a bit tired. I'd not slept very well." Just saying something like that to our children helps us model that we have reflected on a feeling that we had the day before. We've acknowledged that we were acting out of character and we were being snappy. We can say we're sorry for that if that snappiness has been even larger than that. So we're modeling some restorative behaviors. We're modeling emotional literacy, the words that children need to process their feelings, and we're building in those children some emotional intelligence. And if we can do that, it's almost like having an inner monologue. You're cooking and something's gone wrong. Oh, I've put in too much salt, or I thought that was sugar. What am I going to do now? Okay, it's fine. Let's switch this round. I'll add this. It's going to be okay. Even things like that, just that inner monologue of how you're coping day to day. And it can really help our children cope when they've got their emotions. And it's also giving those opportunities to apologize when we have lost our temper. So to say to them, yesterday when I shouted, actually what was going on for me was I was quite nervous about a big meeting I've got in work tomorrow, and I'm really sorry I shouted. And hopefully next time I'll be able to just say to you, I'm feeling a bit nervous about a meeting tomorrow. And of course, we're not going to do this with example of things that are big for us in terms of real life things. We don't want to load our children with our difficulties. But if we can give them little age appropriate um, and emotionally appropriate examples, things we know that are not going to worry them or panic them. And actually, what we're doing is sharing that safe space of sharing emotions and feelings. And it's helping us model accountability as well for when we've done that wrong thing, which is, I think, as adults, if our children came to us and said, I'm really sorry about yesterday, that would really help us all as a family move forward. And again, in school, it's a big thing. And I never want to make a child apologize for the sake of it. I always want to make sure they feel like that is the appropriate thing to do if they've had an argument in school and they want to say it. But helping them get to that place involves all these things that we're talking about. And so top tip number 10, again, it's one for us, and it's about taking some time for yourself. And actually in this, although there's somebody having a lovely cup of tea there, and I'm not devaluing taking a moment, having a coffee, having a bath, lighting candles, beautiful things to do. But actually, I mean more in the moment of the meltdown, when we know we're getting triggered, we know we're taking it personally, we know we're getting angry, or we're getting, to our window of tolerance of what we can take. Actually, to take a moment then and say, I can see you're really upset now. I can see this is really difficult for you. I'm struggling, so I'm going to go and get us both a glass of water, and I'm going to come back. And what's really key is it's absolutely fine and a really good idea to step away from the situation. Obviously, if it's in a moment when we know the child's safe, it might just be that we go to the other side of the room. I can see you're really angry that your brother broke your tower. I'm going to be over here, and I'm here if you need me. And you let them feel those emotions, and you get a minute for yourself. And stepping out to a different room can give you those precious, really needed moments that you need. But you've said to them, I'm coming back. I love you. I'm coming back. I'm here. I'm going to get us both a glass of water. And this is hard to do because we're asking of ourselves actually what we're asking of them in those moments, to interject our natural instinct to be to give in to the big emotions and to calm ourselves down. And it's so hard to do when we're in that fight or flight moment. We haven't got that aspect of our brain working. But that's why if we can take that step out, it can be incredibly beneficial. So actually, I've got another couple of things just to show you before I join Liz again. And they are in line with what I was just saying. And they're just some helpful reminders. Again, these have come about from talking with our families and our parents. So limiting the frustrations. It's really hard, but it's really normal to feel frustrations when we set those boundaries and set those limits. So reminding ourselves that they're not frustrated with us, they're just disappointed that they're not able to do the thing that they wanted to do. So they're frustrated with the limits that you've set and not with you. The limit pushing, we know our children push limits. It's a really natural developmental stage. And actually, if they weren't pushing our limits, particularly in that age 2, age 5, and in those teenage years, it wouldn't be so normal. It would, pushing limits is as natural as them growing taller and their hair getting longer. It's what we want them to be doing to understand themselves and grow into the adults they're going to be. So maybe reminding ourselves that pushing back, as difficult as it feels for us, is a natural developmental stage for them. And safety, it can feel really hard, can't it, in those extreme moments of behavior and emotionally driven moments. But it can be helpful to remind ourselves that they are safe, we are safe, this moment is going to pass. And if we can try and do some of the things of the top tips that I've talked about, we can really bring those moments to closure quicker. And I think when you look back at the top 10, while I said obviously there'll be certain ones that resonate for you more than others and that feel more aligned to yourself and ones that you might be more likely to try, there is almost a bit of a process. They do feed into each other. There's almost a bit of a chronological method behind them. So do, when we look over them, if you can over time, try and embed some of them, all of them. And so lastly, these phrases really just can be supportive for you and things that you can say in that moment to give you that time that we talked about. So I want to help you, but I'm having a hard time staying calm. So I'm just going to lie down next to you and I am here. I'm going to go and get some water to cool down. I'm coming right back. Words like that are tough to hear. So let's take a pause. Let's shake ourselves out and we can keep on talking when we're both feeling better. Shaking, actually, physically shaking our bodies is a really proven strategy to managing behavior. It's what animals do in the animal kingdom when they've had a traumatic experience. They physically shake themselves out of it, and for them, it's gone. And obviously, our brain capacities are very different. So for humans, we hang on to it and we revisit that trauma and we go back to those moments. But shaking, even before the moment, if you can see something bubbling up for your child, then we can start to say, without without invalidating what they're feeling, so without making it too much of a distraction, but I can see the building of towers with your brother is maybe getting a little bit much. Let's all stand up and have a big shake out, and then we'll carry on. It sounds silly, but I love to I love to do it. Try and get it in your exercise. So this slide just reviews the 10, and I would love to know which one has resonated with you. So you can put the number into the chat box, and I think Liz will be able to let me know in a moment. It'd be really interesting to know which ones for you feel really aligned for your family. I know for me, taking a moment of calm and avoiding asking too many questions, I think that one, I'm very much what's going on, why, how are you feeling, what's happened. If I can pull back on that, that's really beneficial. So just before I rejoin Liz, when you get a copy of these slides, there will be some book recommendations. I think you can click these to take you to where you can buy them, but they're easy to find. These are some ones for teenagers. I think it missed loading the ones for younger children. Oh, bear with me. That's perhaps disappeared. I will get it put in before we have them sent out to you, unless I've just switched my slides around accidentally. Yep, these normally come up first. These are many of the books we use in the Brilliant Me courses. And as you can see from the titles there, they are brilliant, really, really lovely, beautiful books. And when children talk about emotions through a character, they can disassociate from themselves, and we find them much more able to talk about feelings. So by doing it through a character, we can build that emotional literacy and that emotional intelligence, but they're not having to experience the feeling themselves. And the last one is some books for us as adults. There's the Philippa Perry one, which is in the top corner there. Permission to Feel, amazing book. Lots of these are on audiobook as well, so do have a go at reading them or finding them if you would like to. And very last thing, when you get the slides, there is a link to Role Model's next webinar, which is going to be UK time, but it will also be recorded, and if you register for it, you can get a copy if the timing isn't right for you. And that's going to be around letting go of perfectionism, which is something that can really feed into big emotions, because so much of our emotions come from a place where we don't feel good enough. And in supporting children with that self-worth and validation of who they are, they don't need external validation, we can help them feel much better about themselves and therefore manage those big emotions. So I am going to stop sharing my screen, I think.
I'm going to join you.
There, brilliant. Hello.
That was great.
How are you doing?
Yeah, good. You know, I've literally just been sat here writing notes. Like, I have to say, this has been one, I think as a mum as well, it's been one of my favorites to listen to. And also I've written down every one of your top tips, because I thought, oh, I'll just write down the ones that might apply. And then I've written all of them down.
All of them, yeah. Do you know what? It's such an intense talk, actually. So it's so lovely it's been recorded, because you almost want to hear them one at a time, because it's a lot to put over, it's a lot to put across, and it's a lot to take in. So yeah, I urge people to watch it back and just pick and choose. But there is a bit of not an order, but I think if we can start combining them all, they all feed into each other. And big picture wise, that's what can get us where we want to go.
And I think it is good to be able to go back, actually, because it's having the skills in the moment, isn't it? And you don't know when those moments are going to come. They always come when you least expect it, where your child has to tell you, they have a melt, or something happens. And it's about being ready yourself. And I think that was really what I've took away from it as well, is about how the power we have as parents, as educators, to be able to role model, which comes back to what you guys do, but that power of managing that, you know, not to go into a similar sort of meltdown. I've seen that happen. You know, we've all been that person who, you know, someone's having a difficult time and you don't make it any better, and you know that, and actually that stepping away from it is so important as well, if you're not emotionally regulated yourself. There's so many things I want to say, and I think a lot of this, again, it resonates as a teacher about, you know, it's that when the adults change, you know, there's that book, isn't there, When the Adults Change, and I think this is almost that version for parents. It's saying that actually we are so powerful when it comes to this, and I think probably my number one was tip 3 about asking questions.
Same.
Not to, you want to find out who's been mean, who said this, who's done that, and actually they might not be able to cope with all of that in that moment, and it is just going back to re-traumatizing almost them from what they felt. You just
bringing more, exactly. And actually, one thing that's really important is, and I don't know if I said it, but in terms of holding that space for them, what we want really is for children to tell us when things aren't great, to tell us the small stuff so that they tell us the big stuff. And if we don't create that safe space, if when they tell us that their shoes feel uncomfortable and then they're crying about it, and we say, oh, just put your shoes on, then they don't feel it. It doesn't feel like that in the moment, but actually, as year by year goes on, when they then have got a more serious problem, we've not made a safe space for them to tell us. So it's about creating that, holding that space and creating that space for them.
And that sense of validation that it's okay to feel.
Yeah,
We dismiss
absolutely.
and go, oh, but you shouldn't, oh, but you don't need to.
Yeah.
And actually,
Yeah.
we do a little thing
Yeah.
now. And, this isn't just, be really personally, this isn't just me to my children, this is even me and my husband, do you want me to listen? Do you want me to just listen, or do you want me to do something? And sometimes the answer is I just need someone to listen. I think we're losing our internet connection. Are you there?
Yeah, exactly, absolutely. And I think more and more now we're learning to do that within our relationships. Oh yeah, I can hear. I
lost you for a
we made it
but you're
almost
back
to the end.
Yeah, you did
hear
really important.
Have you lost me?
No, you're there. I've got
no,
you.
that's great. Good.
I've got
good.
a question.
Okay.
I've got 2 questions I need to ask you, so
Yeah.
don't let me forget. We've only got 5 minutes. Which goodness. So sadness. One of our parents has just put in the chat about how do you deal with sadness? That is just that feeling when something's changing. It's around transitions and actually how difficult it is to lose friends. You've worked internationally. We're a highly transient community. We lose people move on, the teachers you go to. How do you deal with that sadness?
It's really difficult, isn't it? And I think the thing about sadness is we need to feel it. And so it's about saying, I know it's difficult and I know you're sad, but we don't want to move them away from that sadness. So we can give them tools that they can, things they can practically do to help it feel a bit better. So we can write lovely leaving cards, we can make a lovely memory book, we can write letters, and all those things help children feel they've got some control over the sadness and the emotion they're feeling. But actually, to say to them, it's absolutely normal and natural to feel sad right now. Everybody, we're all feeling this. I think so much with emotions and with feelings is that we feel like they're wrong because they feel uncomfortable. We think they're wrong and we're told they're wrong, and we're told that crying is wrong and we need to be brave. And actually, I think we need to acknowledge that feeling sad, being shy, feeling concerned, being a bit upset, these are all acceptable feelings, and they're there to help us and they're there to protect us. But I think in terms of having something tangible to do, so it's sort of twofold. My answer really is letting your child know it's really normal and natural to feel sad, and that's okay. And you're not always going to feel sad. You can absolutely promise them you are not always going to be feeling like this sad. But what can we do to help? Shall we make a card? Shall we make some lovely photos? Shall we put a book together? Or whatever the situation might be, something practical can really help as well, I think.
That's a great idea. It's channeling that feeling, isn't it?
Yeah, definitely.
And another one that's come in to my email is about jealousy, particularly with girls of a certain age, around, I don't know, 11, 12, 13, those age groups. It's really difficult, isn't it? And younger, we're seeing it younger and younger, I think, as well.
Yes, we really are.
I was speaking to a parent the other day about relational aggression and some of the things like coming out of that. And we see it. Yeah. What do we do with that feeling? Because it can lead to meanness and unkindness. When it isn't just a girl emotion, that's wrong to say, but that feeling can lead to such a problem of, groups and friendships. And I think, my advice with this is it is a developmental stage. We watch children go through it and they come out on the other side of that as well. So, to parents, I think that's important to say that it doesn't last forever, but it's definitely a thing. Is there anything we can do about jealousy?
Yeah, and I think that comes to that comparison culture, and actually is in line with our next webinar around perfectionism. And it is so difficult. The thing about jealousy is, as you've said, it's a really normal emotion, but it is one of those that is at risk of almost being embedded in us, and it becomes our go-to emotion at anything that threatens us. And it's about feeling threatened. So we do a lot of work in role models around building self-esteem. And actually, if our child's showing feelings of jealousy or talking about that, or they're behaving off the back of they're giving unkind behaviors because actually they're feeling jealous. We almost want to take the emphasis off the unkind behavior or feeling, off the jealousy, and just embed some confidence skills and embed some ways of them finding their worth and realizing that they don't need to look outside for validation. So if that girl at school's got better hair, nicer shoes, is prettier, is cleverer, actually, rather than focusing on that and saying, well, that doesn't matter, you're just as pretty, that's not validating for them. It feels really real in those moments, but instead almost just taking the emphasis onto something completely different and building in how we can build that individual's confidence and self-worth in them, which is, that's a whole other podcast as well, but webinar. But it's a very difficult one. It's a very common one, but definitely focusing on where you can build self-esteem will take away from moments of jealousy.
Okay, and I think that's again, it's great advice. We've had actually another tip come in from a parent. I'm just seeing it on the Facebook page. It says, I saw a wonderful tip online recently around parents using teddies and soft toys to direct positive comments to children.
I saw this yesterday.
Yes. Okay, so comments like, wow, Teddy, did you see how nicely George got changed into his pajamas this evening? Or so impressed by how George talked so carefully about how he was feeling about missing his friend's play date, Teddy. So I think it's a great almost, what do they call it? Not a distraction technique. It's like a distancing technique, isn't it? Of having
it's that disassociation. It's where we use books and characters, but you're using their teddies. They're in the room. I saw a very similar thing, and it was a parent talking to the teddies, and it was to build confidence in the child and saying, no, Bunny, you're so silly. You don't love them the most. I love them the most. And the child's hearing the parents say positive things about them, but they're saying it to the teddies. So it was the same thing, and it was really beautiful. I thought really beautiful and really powerful.
Really powerful. It takes me back to learning about, there was a study learned years ago about pets and self-esteem, and how actually having a pet, I'm not saying it's something everyone can do, but how having a pet gives you unconditional positive regard. They love you no matter what. They love you whether you are snotty or grumpy or, and it's all of that. There's a lovely story as well, isn't there? No matter what. I think it's one of the books I used to read my children. It's about big and small. And there's this whole story about, will you love me if I am? Will you love me if? And it's a beautiful ending. And it's just, I think sometimes these things help us to know what to have to do when these matters come up. We've just had another question come in, actually. I know we're already over time, but let's just keep going. How do you manage when you see your child being rejected by another child and you're right there seeing it? So, someone saying mean things or being ignored, what do you do?
That's really difficult, isn't it? Because I guess, are you the only adult there? Is the other parent there, which can put more confusion in the mix? That's really difficult. I think if it was me, I would want to try and carefully say something to the child, but in that way of, I can see you're obviously upset right now to have said something unkind. Is there something else that you want to tell me? And almost get them to talk to you rather than the child. It's you instinctively want to say, that's not right. That's not a kind thing to say. Apologize. But again, it's that thing of, we can't be forcing children to apologize when they don't understand what they're saying sorry for. So I would probably, if it was appropriate, try, and again, I don't know the ages, try and speak to the child, and then possibly speak to the child's parent or their teacher, because there's a concern there that the child there's a reason they're being unkind. But I would definitely, with my child, after that moment, try and give them a chance to talk about how it felt, and let's talk about, well, why do you think they maybe said that? And that child realizes it wasn't anything about them, it was about the other child that was being unkind. So the work can almost be done afterwards, even though it feels like in the moment we want to say, don't tell my child they can't come to your party, say sorry now, or don't tell my child something unkind.
We are, that's what we do. And
human
it's difficult
nature.
Yes. And I think anywhere in the world, we would say to adults, probably better not to speak to the child directly, but to report that. If you see that here in school, I would say always tell the child's teacher, always say, this is what I've overheard. And that, the teacher could then, see if it's a pattern, what's going on here, reason. But I do think it is a really difficult one to see your child being not included, being ostracized. It's really difficult because it brings up these feelings straight away, doesn't it, of, I want to deal with that. But I think the most powerful thing you can do for your child then is to deal with your child and like say, what what learning comes from that. How do they learn to be a better person? Because they'd never do that to somebody else as well. We talk a lot about that. If someone's being mean, like you said, why are they being mean, and why might they feel bad about themselves as well?
Exactly.
That they need to be mean to you, like what's going on there, and putting them in a better situation as well, especially if it's at a play date, something like that. Again, I was chatting to a parent this week about that. As parents put our children in situations because it works for us. It doesn't always work for them, and it's about being mindful of that as well. That, sometimes that friendship or that relationship isn't the best for them, but it works for us. And sometimes we've got to be the adult there. There are so many things I want to say, Frances. There's so many things I've written down, but we are running out of time. We're out of time. But I do love the thing about keeping a diary as well. And I think tiredness, sleeping, all of these feed into these big emotions that we see our children go through. We see it in school as well, even with our teenagers. I only teach teenage children, but even that, they'll say, we say, did you have a good sleep last night? And they'll be like, no. And it's like, well, this is why today is such a struggle for you, and I think it's all that holistic view, isn't it, of what our children are going through. So exciting. So the courses are from the 3rd of July for a week. If there are still spaces, I know they are going ahead. There are still spaces on them. I know we're looking to do more, and we did. Parents have asked us about, are there anything for older children? So we are feeding that back to role models as well. So that
think about that.
We talked yesterday about how COVID stole the years of development for a lot of our children. We can't just pretend that it didn't happen.
Yeah.
My daughter played again 11 months online, and it was such a time for development socially that they have missed that. And I think some of these courses will be great. And I know there's some exciting things coming up. So watch this space. If there are parents out there who there's something in this talk that's resonated with you, that you need a chat. I know we've got the summer, we've got 4 days left. Please reach out. This is what we do here at Cranleigh. There's myself, there's Tori. There's also obviously class teachers, there's the heads of year. But if you want to go and speak to someone just about parenting, drop me an email, and we will always make time for you to come in, because it is about supporting each other. So I think that's really important, again, just to say that. Thank you so much, Frances. I've really, really enjoyed it. I look forward to working with you again. And like I say, look forward to what's coming up, collaborating between us for running these courses. So thank you, and have a lovely summer. And to all our community as well.
Thank you so much, Liz.
Have a great summer,
Take care,
everybody.
everybody.
Thank you. Bye.
Take care. Bye. Bye.